I had exactly 7 minutes before I had to be back in triage. The break room was empty except for the hum of the ancient coffee machine and the low buzz of the overhead lights. I cradled the styrofoam cup between my hands, willing the heat to chase away the bone-deep fatigue. My scrubs clung to me in all the wrong places, damp from the post-shift shower I hadn't had time to take. The day had been a marathon, 2 miss, a pediatric asthma case that turned into a code, and a family who decided to argue with me about pain management instead of letting me work. I needed caffeine like I needed oxygen. The door swung open with a sharp bang, and Jenna Caldwell walked in. She moved like she owned the place already, even though she'd started her internship less than a month ago. Blonde hair in a sleek ponytail, white coat open over a scrub top that probably cost more than my entire uniform. And that look in her eyes, like she was waiting for someone to notice her. We'd exchanged maybe 3 sentences total. Always polite. Always brief. She was one of those people who made you feel like you were in the way. She had a mug in one hand, her other shoved in her pocket, and she was talking to someone on her phone. Yeah. I know. I'm coming. Just stopping for coffee. Her voice was loud enough that I could hear it over the machine. And I winced without meaning to. I took a sip and turned slightly, giving her space. The counter was narrow, and the carafe was sitting precariously close to the edge. I thought about moving it, but I didn't want to seem rude. She set her mug down with a clatter, then reached for the sugar packets. As she did, her elbow knocked the carafe. Time slowed down. The ceramic pot tipped, and the dark liquid surged forward. I tried to jerk back, but I wasn't fast enough. Hot coffee splashed across my chest, soaking through the fabric, scalding my skin. I yelped, dropping the cup, which hit the floor and rolled under the table. The burn was instant, and I could feel the warmth spreading, sticking to me in a way that made me want to tear the scrubs off right then. Jenna froze, her hand still in the air, the sugar packet crumpled in her fingers. For a second, nobody said anything. Then she looked up at me, and her expression shifted. Not concern, not apology, something else. Oh, don't worry about it, she said, her voice bright, almost cheerful. My husband is the CEO of this hospital. The words hung in the air like a punch. The break room was quiet enough that I could hear the drip of the coffee pot. I blinked at her, trying to process what she'd just said. The CEO. That was impossible. I knew the man, Dr. Thomas Whitmore. He'd been in charge for 6 years. And I'd met him twice at hospital functions. He was in his late 50s, graying, with a reputation for being meticulous and fair. There was no way he was married to Jenna Caldwell. But she was grinning now, like she'd won something. The other nurses who'd been in the room, Marta and Deshawn, were staring at me, wide-eyed. I could feel the heat of the coffee mixing with the heat in my face. And I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Excuse me, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. My husband, she repeated, enunciating each word. He runs this place. So, you know, accidents happen. She shrugged, like it was no big deal. Like she hadn't just destroyed my only clean set of scrubs and made me look like a fool in front of my colleagues. I looked at Marta, who mouthed, "Are you okay?" I nodded, but I couldn't stop thinking about the way Jenna had said it. She wanted everyone to hear. She wanted me to know that she had power here. And I didn't. That she could do whatever she wanted. And there would be no consequences. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. My hands were shaking. But I managed to unlock it. I scrolled past the usual notifications, 2 missed calls from my mom, a text from my sister about dinner, and found Robert's number. He'd texted me earlier to say he was running late, that he'd be at the hospital in an hour. I hit call. It rang once, twice. Then he picked up. "Hey, babe, what's up? You need to come down to the break room," I said, keeping my voice level. Now, there was a pause, and I could hear the background noise of the OR, beeping monitors. A distant voice. "I'm in the middle of a prep. Can it wait?" "No," I said. "Your new wife just ruined my shift." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my heart pounding. I'd expected him to ask what I meant, to tell me I was overreacting. But he'd hung up. That was worse. That meant he knew exactly who I was talking about. I heard footsteps outside the break room, and I looked up. Robert was standing in the doorway, his surgical cap still on, his face pale. He took in the scene in one glance. Me, soaked in coffee, the broken mug on the floor, Jenna standing by the counter with her arms crossed. His eyes met mine, and for a second, he looked like he might actually be sorry. Then Jenna smiled at him, and he looked away. "What the hell is going on here?" he said, his voice sharp. I stood up, ignoring the way the coffee dripped down my legs. "This is your doing, isn't it? You told her she could say that. You told her she could treat me like this. Nicole, let's talk about this later," he said, stepping into the room. "Right now, I need to get back to the OR. "No," I said. "You need to listen to me. She's lying. The CEO isn't her husband. You know that. And you know what she did. So don't stand there and act like you don't." He opened his mouth, but Jenna cut him off. "Relax. Dr. Marshall. I was just joking. I didn't mean to make a big deal out of it." She gave me a sweet smile, the kind that made you want to slap her. "I'm really sorry, Nicole. I didn't see you there." I laughed. A short, bitter sound. "You didn't see me. You knocked over a pot of hot coffee and got me covered in it. How could you not see me?" Marta stepped forward, her face red. "Jenna, you should really apologize to Nicole. This is serious." "I did," Jenna said, rolling her eyes. "What more do you want from me?" I looked at Robert, who was avoiding my gaze. "I want you to say something. I want you to tell her that what she did was wrong. I want you to tell her that you're not going to let her get away with this." He sighed, running a hand over his face. "Jenna, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were going to be so dramatic. Let's just drop it." "Okay, drop it," I said, my voice rising. "You want me to drop it? After she just humiliated me in front of my co-workers? After she lied about you? After she, that's enough," he said, his voice cold. "I'm not going to stand here and listen to you attack her. You're being irrational." I stared at him, my mouth open. Irrational. That was the word he used. Like I was the one causing trouble. Like I was the one who'd done something wrong. Jenna put a hand on his arm, and he flinched. Like he'd forgotten she was there. "Come on, Rob. Let's go. We don't have time for this." He looked at me one last time, his eyes hard. "I'll talk to you later." Then he walked out, Jenna following behind him. The door closed with a soft click, and I was left alone with Marta and Dishon. The room felt colder than before, and I realized my hands were shaking again. "Are you okay?" Marta asked, her voice gentle. I nodded, but I didn't feel okay. I felt like the ground had shifted under me. Like everything I thought I knew about my life was a lie. Robert had lied to me. Jenna had lied to me. And now I was stuck in the middle of it, with no idea what to do next. I picked up the broken pieces of the mug, dropping them into the trash. The coffee stain on my scrubs was dark and spreading, and I knew I'd have to wear it for the rest of my shift. I thought about calling my mom, or my sister, but I didn't want to explain this. I didn't want to say the words out loud. Instead, I took a deep breath and straightened my shoulders. I had work to do. I had patients to take care of, and I had a husband to confront. But as I walked out of the break room, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The corridor outside the break room felt longer than it should have. My wet shoes squeaked against the linoleum with every step, and the coffee-soaked fabric of my scrubs clung to my skin like a second layer of humiliation. I kept my head down, avoiding eye contact with the nurses and techs I passed. I could feel their gazes anyway. Curious, sympathetic, judgmental. They knew something had happened. They just didn't know what. When I reached the unit, Marta caught up with me at the nursing station. "Nicole, wait. Are you sure you're okay?" "I'm fine," I said, too quickly. My voice came out sharper than I intended, and she flinched. I softened it. "Really? I just need to change." She hesitated, then nodded. "Let me know if you need anything." "Okay." Okay. I grabbed a fresh set of scrubs from the locker room and changed in record time. The water in the sink ran cold, and I stood there for a moment, letting it wash over my hands, trying to wash away the feeling of Jenna's smirk, Robert's silence. When I looked in the mirror, my reflection was blotchy, my eyes red-rimmed. I splashed water on my face and reapplied my lip balm, smoothing down my hair. I didn't want anyone else to see how much this had shaken me. Back in the unit, the pace was relentless. A woman in room 4 was in active labor, and the resident on call was struggling to manage her pain. I jumped in, coaching her through contractions, adjusting the epidural, and reassuring her husband when he started to panic. It was exactly what I needed, something familiar, something that required my full attention. For a few minutes, I forgot about Jenna, about Robert, about the mess in the break room. But the reprieve didn't last. Around 3 o'clock, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I checked it quickly, a text from Robert. Running late. Talk soon. I stared at the message, my stomach tightening. He hadn't called. He'd texted. Like I was an afterthought. Like what happened in the break room was no big deal. I deleted the message without responding and shoved the phone back into my pocket. By the end of my shift, I was exhausted. The coffee stain had dried into a stiff patch on my chest, and my feet throbbed. I stopped by the lounge to grab my bag, and that's when I saw her, Jenna, sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up when I walked in, and her smile was slow, deliberate. Hey, Nicole. Long shift. Not as long as yours will be, I said, my voice flat. She raised an eyebrow. What's that supposed to mean? It means I know what you did, I said, stepping closer. And I know why you did it. Her smile widened. I have no idea what you're talking about. Don't play dumb, I said. You told everyone my husband is the CEO. You thought that would scare me, make me back off. But here's the thing, I know Robert. He's not capable of that kind of power play. He's a surgeon, not a CEO. So who's the real man behind the curtain? Jenna. For a second, her mask slipped, her eyes narrowed, and her fingers tightened around her phone. But then she recovered, standing up and brushing imaginary lint off her sleeves. You're delusional. I was just making a joke. If you can't take a little teasing, maybe you shouldn't work in a hospital. I laughed, loud and harsh. A joke. You humiliated me in front of my colleagues. You got me written up for insubordination because I refused to let it go. That's not a joke, Jenna. That's sabotage. Written up, she said, feigning shock. I didn't do anything. You're the one who called your husband. You're the one who caused a scene. Because I was defending myself, I said. Something you obviously have no experience with. She took a step toward me, her voice low. Careful, Nicole. Accidents happen. People get hurt. Especially when they stick their noses where they don't belong. I froze. That wasn't a threat. It was a promise. And it sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold air conditioning. Before I could respond, the door to the lounge opened, and Robert walked in. He stopped when he saw us, his eyes darting between Jenna and me. What's going on here? Nothing, Jenna said quickly. Just talking. We were discussing your wife's sudden promotion to CEO, I said, my voice icy. Apparently, she forgot to mention it to you. His jaw tightened. Nicole. Enough. Enough, I said, stepping closer to him. You mean enough of you lying to me? Enough of you letting her walk all over me? Because if that's what you want, then yes, I've had enough. He ran a hand over his face, his frustration palpable. Can we please take this somewhere private? Why? I said. So you can lie to me some more. So you can tell me it's all in my head. I don't think so. Jenna cleared her throat. Maybe I should go. I don't want to cause any more problems. Stay, Robert said sharply. This concerns you. She sat back down. Her posture perfect. Her expression innocent. It made me sick. Fine, I said. Let's talk. Tell me the truth. Robert, is Jenna your mistress? Or are you just too stupid to realize she's using you? His face turned red. How dare you? How dare I? I said, my voice rising. How dare you cheat on me? How dare you let her humiliate me? How dare you treat me like I'm disposable? I didn't, he started. But I cut him off. Don't. I said. Don't you dare lie to me. I know what I saw. I know what she said. And I know what you didn't say. He stared at me for a long moment, his chest rising and falling rapidly. Then he sighed, running a hand through his hair. Okay. Yes. She's been coming on to me. But I haven't done anything. I swear. You haven't done anything. I said. Incredulous. You let her spill coffee on me. You let her lie about being the CEO. You let her threaten me in the lounge. That's not nothing, Robert. That's everything. I didn't let her. He said, his voice pleading. I tried to stop her. I told her to leave you alone. But she wouldn't listen. Of course she wouldn't listen. I said. Because she knows you won't do anything to stop her. Because you're weak. Because you're spineless. Because you're exactly what she thinks you are, a man who'll let his wife be humiliated as long as he gets to keep his precious reputation intact. His face crumpled. And for a second, I felt a flicker of pity. But it was gone as quickly as it came. Pity wasn't going to fix this. Pity wasn't going to undo the damage she'd done. Pity wasn't going to make me trust him again. I'm sorry, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I never meant for any of this to happen. Well, it did, I said. And now we have to deal with it. I turned to leave. But he grabbed my arm. Wait. Please. Don't go. Not like this. I looked down at his hand. Then back at his face. Let go of me. Robert. He hesitated. Then released me. I love you. He said. I don't want to lose you. You already have. I said. And then I walked out. Leaving him standing there with Jenna. Both of them watching me go. The drive home was a blur. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. And the tears blurred my vision until I had to pull over to wipe them away. When I finally walked through the front door, the silence was deafening. Our house felt emptier than it ever had before. Like Robert's absence had hollowed it out. I dropped my bag by the door and kicked off my shoes. Then headed straight for the kitchen. I needed a drink, something strong. Something that would numb the ache in my chest. The liquor cabinet was where it always was. And I poured myself a generous shot of bourbon. I tossed it back in one gulp. The burn welcome. Familiar. As I set the glass down, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Robert. Please talk to me. I'm begging you. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the delete button. Finally, I typed a single word, no. Then I powered off my phone and tossed it onto the couch. I didn't want to hear his excuses. I didn't want to hear his apologies. I wanted to forget this whole mess. At least for tonight. But sleep didn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jenna's smirk. Robert's silence. I felt the coffee burning my skin. Heard her voice ringing in my ears. My husband is the CEO of this hospital. It wasn't just an insult. It was a declaration of war. And I had no idea how to fight back. At some point, I must have dozed off. Because the next thing I knew, sunlight was streaming through the blinds. And my alarm was blaring. I silenced it and sat up. My head pounding. The events of the previous day came rushing back. And I groaned, dragging a hand over my face. I needed coffee. Strong coffee. Lots of it. As I stumbled into the kitchen, my phone buzzed again. I ignored it, filling the kettle and turning on the burner. When the water boiled, I made myself a cup, adding extra sugar and cream. I wrapped my hands around the mug, letting the heat seep into my palms. Then I remembered Robert's phone. Last night, after he'd grabbed my arm, he'd dropped it on the couch. I hadn't noticed until now, but it was still there. Screen cracked. Battery dead. I hesitated, then picked it up. Maybe there was something on it, a clue, a confession, anything that could help me understand what was happening. I plugged it in and waited for it to boot up. When it did, I bypassed the lock screen easily. Robert never used a passcode for convenience. I scrolled through his apps, checking his messages, his emails. Most of it was innocuous, hospital gossip. patient updates, reminders about meetings. But then I found it. A text thread with Jenna. The most recent message was from last night. Sent at 11:42 p.m. We're still on for tonight. My heart stopped. I read it again. My hands trembling. We're still on for tonight. That meant after everything. After she humiliated me. After Robert promised to talk to her. After I stormed out, they were still planning to meet. Still carrying on with whatever this was. I scrolled back further. Reading their conversation. It was filled with innuendo and lies. Promises and threats. Jenna had been manipulating him from the start. Playing on his ego. His insecurities. She'd convinced him that she loved him. That she wanted to be with him. That she could help him advance his career. And he'd fallen for it. Hook, line, and sinker. The worst part was that she'd been planning this all along. The coffee incident wasn't an accident. It was a setup. A way to test me. To see how I'd react. And when I reacted strongly, she'd double down. Using Robert to punish me. To isolate me. To make me doubt myself. I sat down at the kitchen table. Clutching the phone like a lifeline. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt something other than anger. I felt determination. Jenna wanted a war. Fine. Let's give her one. I powered off Robert's phone and set it aside. Then I poured myself another cup of coffee and sat back. Staring out the window at the sunrise. The sky was streaked with pink and orange. Beautiful in a way that felt cruel. But I didn't care. I had a plan now. And I was going to see it through. No matter what it took. The first thing I did when I got to the hospital the next morning was head straight for HR. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I marched into Marge's office. My scrubs still wrinkled from sleeping in them. My hair pulled back in a messy bun. Marge looked up from her computer. Her glasses slipping down her nose. "Nicole, what can I do for you?" she asked. Her voice warm but cautious. I closed the door behind me and sat down. Setting Robert's phone on her desk. "I need you to run a background check on someone for me. Jenna Caldwell. She's an intern in the ER." Marge's eyebrows shot up. "Is this about yesterday?" "Nicole, I know things got heated. But, it's not about yesterday," I said, cutting her off. "It's about fraud. She's been telling people her husband is the CEO of this hospital. That's a lie. I need to know who she really is." Marge picked up the phone. Her fingers hovering over the keyboard. "I can do that. But if this is a personal issue, you should." "It's not personal," I said. My voice sharp. "It's professional. If she's willing to lie about something like that, what else is she lying about? What else is she hiding?" Marge studied me for a moment. Then nodded. "All right. I'll run the check and get back to you." I stood up. But before I could leave, she added, "Nicole, be careful. This hospital is a small world. And rumors travel fast." I nodded. But I didn't feel reassured. I'd learned that the hard way yesterday. Rumors weren't just traveling fast, they were being manufactured, weaponized. And I was the target. The rest of the morning was a blur of patience and paperwork. But my mind was elsewhere. I kept checking my phone, willing Marge to text me with the results. By lunchtime, I couldn't wait anymore. I ducked into an empty exam room and called her. "Did you find something?" I asked without preamble. "I did," she said, her voice grim. "Jenna Caldwell's husband is Daniel Caldwell. He's an IT project manager in the facilities department. Not the CEO. Not even close." I closed my eyes. Relief washing over me. I wasn't crazy. She had lied. And now we had proof. "Anything else?" I asked. "Not much," Marge said. She graduated from a community college with a nursing degree. No red flags on her employment history. But she's only been at this hospital for 3 weeks. That's unusual for an intern. "Unusual how?" I pressed. "Most interns come through the residency program," Marge explained. "They are vetted, matched with mentors, that sort of thing. Jenna was brought in through an external placement service. The hospital paid a premium for her spot. An external placement service." I repeated. "Who authorized that?" "Dr. Whitmore signed off on it," Marge said. He's the one who approved her contract. My stomach churned. Dr. Whitmore, the real CEO. Why would he approve an intern who wasn't part of the normal program? Unless he knew something about her. Unless he was involved. Thanks, Marge, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Keep this between us for now. Of course, she said. But Nicole, be careful. This goes higher than you think. I hung up and leaned against the cool tile wall, my mind racing. Dr. Whitmore was supposed to be above this kind of petty drama. He was the steady hand guiding the hospital through budget cuts and accreditation reviews. He wasn't supposed to be mixed up with interns playing games of power. But then again, maybe he was. Maybe this was all part of something bigger. A shake-up. A takeover. Something that involved Robert, Jenna, and the mysterious CEO she kept referencing. I pushed the thoughts aside and headed back to the unit. I had a job to do. Patients to care for. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. It started as a prank, a missing chart here. A delayed lab result there. Annoying. But manageable. But by mid-afternoon, it had escalated. My med cart was empty. My schedule had been mysteriously altered. And the charge nurse informed me that I'd been assigned to the psych consult team for the rest of the week. That's not my specialty. I protested. It's what's available, she said. Her tone clipped. Dr. Whitmore wants all senior nurses to cross-train. I stared at her. My blood boiling. Dr. Whitmore. Of course. He was punishing me for investigating Jenna. For threatening to expose the truth. I spent the rest of the shift juggling unstable patients and incomplete documentation. My frustration mounting with every passing hour. By the time my shift ended, I was ready to explode. I stormed into Robert's office, ignoring the sign on the door that read "Do Not Disturb." He looked up from his desk, his face pale. "What are you doing here?" he asked. Startled. "What am I doing here?" I echoed, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "I could ask you the same thing. Did you know about this? About my schedule? About the missing meds? About the fact that I've been reassigned to psych?" He stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "Nicole, calm down. This isn't what it looks like." "Then what is it?" I demanded. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're punishing me for finding out about Jenna. For finding out about your little affair." His face twisted in anger. "I told you. It's not an affair. Nothing happened. Nothing happened," I said, laughing bitterly. "She sends you texts about meeting up. She tells everyone you're the CEO. She humiliates me in front of the entire staff. And you're telling me nothing happened. She's manipulative," he said, his voice low. "She plays games." "I didn't realize, you didn't realize," I interrupted. "You're a grown man. Robert. You're a doctor. How could you fall for something like this?" His jaw tightened. "I didn't fall for it. I was flattered. She made me feel important. Needed. Like I mattered." I stared at him, my heart breaking all over again. He wasn't just weak, he was pathetic. He'd let some young, conniving intern stroke his ego until he forgot who he was. Until he forgot who he was married to. "I'm sorry," he said, reaching for my hand. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I love you. I want to fix this." I pulled my hand away. "There's nothing to fix. You broke it when you decided to cheat on me. When you decided to lie to me. When you decided to side with her instead of me." "I didn't side with her," he insisted. "I told her to leave you alone. I told her it was over. But you didn't mean it," I said. "Because if you did, you would have ended it. You would have told her to stay away. You would have chosen me." He opened his mouth to respond. But I held up a hand. "Don't. Just don't. I can't do this right now." I turned to leave. But he followed me into the hallway. "Where are you going?" "Home," I said. "I need to think." "Nicole. Wait," he said, grabbing my arm. "Please. Don't leave like this. Not again." I looked at his hand on my arm. At the desperation in his eyes. For a moment, I wavered. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that he could change. That we could fix this. But the evidence was stacked against him. The texts, the lies, the way he'd caved to Jenna's threats. "Let go of me, Robert," I said, my voice firm. He hesitated, then released me. "I'll make this right," he said. "I promise." I didn't answer. I just walked away. My head held high, my heart heavy. When I got home, I found a package on the porch. It was small, wrapped in brown paper, with no return address. I carried it inside and set it on the kitchen table, my hands shaking as I untied the string. Inside was a flash drive and a note. The note was typed, single-spaced, unsigned. "If you want to know the truth about your husband in your hospital, insert this into a secure computer. Be careful. They're watching." I stared at the note, my mind racing. Who had sent this? How had they known I was investigating? And what kind of truth was I about to uncover? I glanced at the clock. It was nearly midnight. Too late to do anything now. But tomorrow I would find out what was really going on. I wrapped the flash drive in a piece of cloth and hid it in my underwear drawer, then locked the bedroom door. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I realized that I was no longer just fighting for my marriage. I was fighting for my career, my reputation, my sanity, and I was going to win. The next morning, I arrived at the hospital early, determined to dig deeper. I bypassed the main entrance and took the service elevator to the sub-basement, where the IT department was located. Daniel Caldwell, Jenna's husband, worked there. If anyone knew what was going on, it was him. I found him in the server room, surrounded by blinking monitors and tangled cables. He was younger than I expected, with a scruffy beard and tired eyes. He looked up when I entered, his expression wary. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice guarded. "I'm looking for information about my husband," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Robert Marshall. He's a surgeon here." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "What about him?" "I think he's involved with someone," I said. "Someone who's using him. Someone who's lying to him. And I think you know who that is." He hesitated, then sighed. "You're talking about Jenna." I nodded. "She told me her husband is the CEO. That's a lie. But she keeps saying it." "Why?" Daniel rubbed his forehead, his frustration evident. "She's obsessed with status, with power. She thinks if she can convince people she's connected, they'll respect her. She's been spinning this fantasy for months, ever since she got the internship." "But why here?" I pressed. "Why my husband?" "Because he's vulnerable," Daniel said. "He's unhappy in his marriage. He's stressed about work. She saw an opportunity and took it. She's good at that." "Is she working with anyone else?" I asked. "Anyone in administration?" Daniel hesitated, then shook his head. "I don't think so. But she mentioned someone named the chairman. Said he'd help her if she played her cards right." My heart skipped a beat. The chairman. That had to be Dr. Whitmore. He was the chairman of the board, the CEO, the man who'd approved Jenna's contract, the man who'd reassigned my schedule. It all fit together now. Jenna wasn't working alone. She had an ally in the highest levels of the hospital, an ally who was helping her destroy me. "Thank you," I said, turning to leave. "Nicole," Daniel called after me. "Be careful. She's dangerous." I nodded, but I didn't feel reassured. Dangerous was an understatement. Jenna was a predator, and she'd set her sights on me, but I wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not ever. By the time I returned to the unit, my mind was made up. I had enough evidence to go to the board, enough to expose Jenna, Robert, and Dr. Whitmore for what they were, enough to clear my name and reclaim my life. But as I prepared to leave for the day, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Nice try, but you're too late." Attached was a photo of the flash drive I'd hidden in my drawer. The camera angle was from inside my bedroom. They were in my house. The photo hit my phone like a punch to the gut. I stared at it, my breath catching in my throat. The flash drive was unmistakable, wrapped in that stupid floral cloth I'd bought on clearance at Target. The angle was low, taken from near the floor, like the photographer had been squatting by my bed. The timestamp in the corner read 03:17 a.m. They'd been inside my house while I slept. My first instinct was to call the police. My fingers hovered over the screen, dialing 911 before I stopped myself. What would I say? That someone had taken a picture of my underwear drawer. That an intern and her IT project manager husband had broken into my home. Without concrete proof, it sounded like paranoia. And if the police investigated, word would spread through the hospital faster than a norovirus outbreak. I couldn't afford that. Not yet. Instead, I powered off my phone and slid it into the pocket of my lab coat. I kept my movements slow, deliberate. As I finished charting the last of my patients, the unit was quiet, the shift winding down. But I felt exposed, like the walls had eyes. Every time the door opened, I tensed, half expecting to see Jenna standing there with that infuriating smirk of hers. But she didn't come. When my shift ended, I didn't go home. I drove straight to Liam O'Connor's apartment. Liam was the hospital's chief of compliance, a former federal prosecutor with a reputation for integrity and a fondness for scotch. He'd also been my mentor during nursing school, the only person I trusted to listen without judgment. His building was in a converted warehouse district, all exposed brick and industrial chic. I let myself in with the key he'd given me years ago and found him in the kitchen, stirring a drink at the counter. He looked up when I entered, his grey eyes sharp behind his glasses. "Nicole," he said, setting down the spoon. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" I didn't answer. I walked straight to him, pulled the flash drive from my pocket, and set it on the counter. "I need you to look at this." He picked it up, turning it over in his fingers. "What is it?" "I don't know," I said. "But someone broke into my house last night and took a picture of it. This is what they were after." Liam's expression hardened. He gestured for me to sit, then poured me a glass of scotch without asking. I took it gratefully, downing half in one gulp. The burn helped clear the fog from my brain. "Start from the beginning," he said, settling into the chair across from me. I told him everything. About Jenna spilling coffee on me. About her claiming her husband was the CEO. About Robert's denial and Jenna's threats. About the reassignment of my schedule and the missing meds. About Daniel Caldwell's revelation and the anonymous flash drive. I even showed him the photo, still open on my phone. When I finished, Liam was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "You're in deep, kid. Tell me something I don't know," I said, my voice brittle. "I'm serious," he said, leaning forward. "If what you're saying is true, this goes all the way to the top. Dr. Whitmore doesn't just approve internships on a whim. There's a committee for that. A vetting process. If he bypassed it, he had a reason. And if Jenna's involved." He trailed off, shaking his head. "She's a pawn. Or a weapon. Either way, she's dangerous." "And Robert?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Liam sighed. "He's compromised. Whether he knows it or not. If Whitmore's backing Jenna, then Robert's already lost. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" I thought about the photo. About the violation of my privacy. About the way my life had been upended in less than a week. I thought about Robert's face when I confronted him. The mix of guilt and defiance. I thought about Jenna's laugh. Light and cruel. As she'd watched me squirm. "I'm going to confront her," I said. Liam's eyebrows shot up. "Are you out of your mind? She's already broken into your house. What's she going to do? Spike your coffee?" "I can't let her get away with this," I said, my jaw set. "I can't let her destroy my career, my marriage, my life." "You're not listening," Liam said, his voice low. "This isn't about you anymore. It's about the hospital. About the people who depend on it. If Whitmore's involved in something illegal, I know," I interrupted. "But I can't prove it. Not without risking everything. And if I go to the board now, they'll just cover it up. They'll protect him. Protect the institution. I need leverage. I need her to admit what she's done. To implicate him." Liam studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "All right. But you're not doing this alone. I'll be there. And I'll record it. I hesitated. You'd do that for me. I owe you, he said, pouring himself another drink. Besides, I'm not letting you waltz into a trap without backup, even if you are the most stubborn woman I've ever met. I managed a weak smile. Thanks. Liam, don't thank me yet, he said, pulling out his phone. We'll need a plan. A public place, witnesses, and a way to provoke her into incriminating herself. I thought for a moment, then said, the cafeteria. Tonight. It's busy. There are cameras. And she'll be there. She always eats dinner there at 7. Liam nodded, already typing notes. I'll arrange for a colleague of mine to be nearby, off duty, but watching. And I'll make sure the recording device is secure. You'll wear a lapel mic. Discreet. What about Robert? I asked. Leave him out of it. Liam said. If he's as compromised as you say, he's useless to us. Worse, he could tip her off. I agreed. Robert was a liability. I had to deal with him later. Right now, my focus was on Jenna, on exposing the truth, on taking back control. The cafeteria was packed that night. As expected, the smell of fried chicken and mashed potatoes filled the air, mingling with the low hum of conversation. I sat at a table near the back, scanning the room. Jenna was already there, at a table by the window, laughing with a group of residents. She was wearing a form-fitting dress that showed off her figure. Her hair styled to perfection. She looked like a queen surveying her kingdom. I took a deep breath and stood up, my legs trembling. Liam had insisted on coming with me, but I'd made him wait in the hallway. This was my fight, my moment. I walked over to Jenna's table, my heels clicking against the floor. The residents fell silent as I approached, their eyes wide with curiosity. Jenna looked up, her smile faltering when she saw me. Nicole, she said, her voice smooth. What a surprise. We need to talk, I said, my voice cold. She arched an eyebrow. About what? The weather. The latest episode of Grey's Anatomy. Or are you still hung up on that little coffee incident? Cut the crap. Jenna, I said, lowering my voice so only she could hear. I know about your husband. I know about your little game. And I know about your boss. Her expression didn't change, but I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. I have no idea what you're talking about. Don't play dumb, I said, leaning closer. You told everyone Robert is the CEO. You humiliated me in front of the entire staff. You broke into my house. And you're working with Dr. Whitmore. So let's cut the act. What do you want from me? She laughed. A light, tinkling sound that made my skin crawl. You're delusional. I don't know what you think you know. But you're wrong. And if you keep this up, you're going to regret it. Or what? I said, my voice rising. You'll humiliate me again. You'll break into my house again. You'll ruin my career. Go ahead. Try. I'm not afraid of you anymore. The room had gone quiet. A few people were openly staring at us, their forks frozen halfway to their mouths. Jenna's face turned red, and for a second, I thought she might slap me. Then she smiled, slow and dangerous. You should be afraid, because I'm not the one who's going to suffer. It's your precious Robert. He's the one who's going to pay. And when he does, you'll wish you'd never opened your mouth. What are you talking about? I asked, my heart pounding. Ask him about the money, she said, her voice low. Ask him where it went. Ask him why he's been skimming from the research fund. Oh wait, he didn't tell you that, did he? Because he's a liar. Just like you. I stared at her, my mind reeling. Research fund. Skimming. Those were federal offenses. If Robert had stolen grant money, if he'd been embezzling, you're lying, I said. But my voice lacked conviction. Am I? She said, standing up. Or are you just too blind to see the truth? Your husband is a thief, Nicole. And I'm the one who's going to bring him down. Unless you back off. Unless you leave me alone. Unless you let me finish what I started. And if I don't? I asked, my voice steady despite the fear coiling in my stomach. She leaned in close, her lips brushing my ear. Then you'll lose everything. Your job, your reputation, your husband. And when you do, remember this, I warned you. With that, she turned and walked away, her hips swaying, her head held high. The residents stared after her, their expressions a mix of awe and confusion. I stood there, rooted to the spot, my mind racing. Jenna's words echoed in my head. Research fund. Skimming. Thief. Could it be true? Had Robert been stealing from the hospital? From the government? And if so, how deep did it go? How many people were involved? I felt a tap on my shoulder and jumped, whirling around to see Liam standing there, his face grim. Are you okay? He asked, his voice low. I shook my head, unable to speak. I recorded everything, he said, holding up his phone. But she didn't incriminate herself. Not really. Just vague threats and innuendo. She said Robert stole from the research fund. I said, my voice trembling. She said he's been skimming money. Is that even possible? Liam's expression was sober. It's possible. The research fund is a black box. Lots of money flows in and out. And it's easy to hide discrepancies if you know how. But we need proof. Hard evidence. Otherwise, it's just her word against his. I thought about the photo. About the flash drive. About the way my life had been turned upside down in less than a week. I thought about Robert's face. The guilt and fear in his eyes. And I knew one thing for certain, I couldn't trust him. Not anymore. We need to find the ledger. I said. The one she mentioned. If Robert's been keeping track of the money, it has to be somewhere. Liam nodded. Agreed. But where? His office. His laptop. His safe deposit box. His office. I said without hesitation. He keeps everything there. Grant proposals. Financial reports. Patient files. If there's a ledger, it'll be there. Then that's where we'll look. Liam said. His voice firm. Tonight. I hesitated. Breaking into Robert's office felt like a betrayal. Like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. But what choice did I have? If Robert was guilty, I needed to know. And if he was innocent, well, then I needed to clear his name. Either way, the truth was out there. And I was going to find it. We left the cafeteria separately, blending into the flow of staff heading home. The hospital was quiet at this hour. The halls dimly lit. The air heavy with antiseptic and exhaustion. We met in the parking garage, where Liam had parked his car. You still want to do this? He asked, his voice low. I nodded. I have to. He handed me a pair of gloves and a small flashlight. Keys. I pulled Robert's master keycard from my pocket. He'd given it to me years ago. Back when we'd still shared everything. Now it felt like a betrayal to use it. We took the elevator to the administrative wing, our footsteps echoing in the empty space. The door to Robert's office was locked, but the keycard worked like a charm. We slipped inside, our movements swift and silent. The office was exactly as I remembered it. Dark wood paneling, leather chairs, a massive mahogany desk. Robert's laptop sat closed on the desk, flanked by stacks of papers and manila folders. I crossed to the desk, my heart pounding, and started opening drawers. What are you looking for? Liam whispered. A ledger. I said. Something with numbers, dates, names. We searched for an hour, emptying drawers, flipping through files, scanning the shelves. I found grant proposals, patient consent forms, even a bottle of Robert's cologne. But no ledger. No sign of embezzlement. Maybe she was lying. Liam said, his voice hopeful. Or maybe we're looking in the wrong place. I said, frustration creeping into my tone. I turned to the bookshelf behind the desk, running my fingers along the spines of the books. One of them felt loose, like it hadn't been opened in years. I pulled it free, and a small metal box clattered to the floor. What's that? Liam asked. I bent down and picked it up. It was a lockbox, old and battered, with a combination lock. I tried the usual combinations, Robert's birthday, our anniversary, the year we met. None of them worked. Try 0423. Liam said suddenly. I looked at him, confused. What? April 23 Road. He said. The date of the first grant proposal he submitted. It's the kind of thing he'd use as a password. I tried it. The lock clicked open. Inside the box were several envelopes, each labeled with a date and a dollar amount. I opened one, and my stomach sank. It was a stack of $100 bills, held together with a rubber band. The next envelope contained a USB drive. The third, a passport. Not just any passport. A diplomatic passport. Under a different name. Who the hell is James Callahan? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Liam took the passport from me, his face pale. This is bad. Really bad. What do you mean? I asked, my heart racing. James Callahan is a known alias for a man named Victor Rask. Liam said. He's a Russian national with ties to organized crime. He's been on Interpol's watch list for years. I stared at the passport, my mind reeling. Robert wasn't just embezzling money. He was laundering it. Through the hospital. Through the research fund. And Jenna was part of it. She'd been sent to distract me. To keep me from discovering the truth. We have to go to the FBI. I said. My voice shaking. Not yet. Liam said. Snapping the lockbox shut. If we go to them now, they'll want to know how we got this. How we broke into Robert's office. We'll be implicated. And if Victor Rask is involved, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I knew what he meant. If Victor Rask was involved, this wasn't just a local scandal. It was international. Dangerous. Deadly. Then what do we do? I asked. Liam thought for a moment. Then said. We take this to someone who can protect us. Someone with connections. Someone who owes me a favor. Who? I asked. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. His name is Detective Mark Heller. He's with the state police. He's handled cases like this before. He'll know what to do. I nodded. Relief washing over me. At least now we had a plan. At least now we weren't alone. We left the office, locking the door behind us. As we walked back to the elevator, I felt a surge of adrenaline. We had the proof. We had the evidence. And we had a chance to stop them. To expose the truth. To take back our lives. But as the elevator doors closed, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were already too late. That the damage had been done. That the web of lies and deceit had already ensnared us. And that getting out would be harder than getting in. We drove to Detective Heller's office in silence, the weight of our discovery pressing down on us. When we arrived, Liam introduced me as his associate, and Heller greeted us with a curt nod. He was in his 40s, with a square jaw and tired eyes, the kind of man who'd seen too much and said too little. We sat in his office, the lockbox between us on the desk. Liam laid out everything, the coffee incident, Jenna's threats, the reassignment of my schedule, the break-in, the passport. Heller listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When Liam finished, Heller leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. And you're sure this isn't some elaborate hoax? He asked. Absolutely not. Liam said. Nicole's been targeted from the start. This isn't about her. It's about the money, and the people behind it. Heller nodded, then picked up the passport and examined it closely. Victor Rask. He murmured. This just got complicated. What do you mean? I asked. Rask isn't just a mobster. Heller said. He's a broker. He moves money, weapons, people. If he's involved, this goes beyond embezzlement. We're talking human trafficking, money laundering, possibly terrorism financing. I felt the blood drain from my face. Human trafficking. That was a word I never thought I'd hear in connection with my husband, with my hospital, with my life. What happens now? I asked, my voice barely audible. Heller stood up, his expression grim. Now we move carefully, very carefully. If Rask is involved, he has eyes everywhere. And if he thinks we're closing in, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I knew what he meant. If Rask felt threatened, he'd lash out. And he wouldn't hesitate to use me or Liam as leverage. We'll need protection, Liam said. Already arranged, Heller said, nodding toward the door. 2 officers will be stationed outside your apartment. And you'll carry a panic button at all times. I nodded, my hands trembling. I'd never felt so vulnerable in my life. But I also felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like someone was on my side. Someone who understood the gravity of the situation. Someone who could help me fight back. One more thing, Hella said, turning to me. You need to stay away from Robert. And from Jenna. Until we have a solid case. You're a liability. To yourself and to this investigation. I hesitated. Then nodded. Understood. Hella handed me a card with his contact information. Call me if anything changes. Anything at all. I took the card and slipped it into my pocket. Then we stood up. Ready to leave. As we walked out of the police station, the sun was rising, casting a warm glow over the city. For a moment, I allowed myself to hope. Hope that we could stop them. Hope that we could expose the truth. Hope that we could rebuild our lives. But as Liam's car pulled away from the curb, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were still in the eye of the storm. That the worst was yet to come. And that when it did, we'd have to be ready. The first thing I noticed when I got home was the police cruiser parked across the street. 2 officers in reflective vests were leaning against the hood, sipping coffee from paper cups. They straightened up when I approached. Their expressions professional but friendly. Ms. Marshall. One of them asked, his badge identifying him as Officer Reyes. Yes, I said, fumbling with my keys. We're here to keep an eye on the place, he said, gesturing toward the house. Detective Hella's orders. I nodded, my mouth suddenly dry. I hadn't realized how much I'd been dreading coming home until I saw them there. A tangible reminder of the danger I was in. Is it always going to be like this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Officer Reyes exchanged a glance with his partner. Then said, until the investigation is complete. Yes. But don't worry. We're trained for this. You're safe here. Safe. The word felt foreign. Like it belonged to someone else's life. I forced a smile and unlocked the door, stepping inside and closing it behind me. The house was quiet. Too quiet. And the silence pressed against my ears like a physical weight. I dropped my bag by the door and went straight to the kitchen. Needing a drink. Something to steady my nerves. The bottle of bourbon I'd opened the night before was still on the counter. Half empty. I poured a generous shot and tossed it back. The burn familiar. Comforting. As I set the glass down, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my sister. Emily. You okay? Mom said you're in some kind of trouble at work. Call me. I stared at the message. My chest tightening. My mother had always had a way of hearing things she wasn't supposed to. And I'd been so focused on protecting her from the truth that I'd forgotten how small our hometown really was. I texted her back, I'm fine. Just a misunderstanding with a co-worker. I'll explain later. It was a lie. Of course. A pathetic, transparent lie. But it was the best I could do for now. I couldn't tell her the truth. Not yet. Not when the danger was still so close. I set the phone down and paced the length of the living room. My mind racing. The lockbox was still in my purse. Its contents a secret I was desperate to share with someone. Anyone. But I knew better than to let it out of my sight. If it was discovered missing, the implications would be catastrophic. I thought about Robert. About the passport. About the man named Victor Rask. I thought about the way Robert had looked at me when I confronted him. The mix of guilt and defiance in his eyes. I thought about the way he'd caved to Jenna's threats. The way he'd let her humiliate me. He was guilty. I was sure of it now. And the worst part was, I didn't know if I could forgive him. If I even wanted to. The sound of a car door slamming outside startled me. And I froze. My heart pounding. I crept to the window and peered through the blinds. My breath catching in my throat. It was Liam. I unlocked the front door before he could knock. And he stepped inside. His face grim. You got my text? He asked. His voice low. I nodded, stepping aside to let him in. What's going on? It's all over the hospital, he said, his eyes scanning the room. The video from the cafeteria. Someone posted it online. It's trending on social media. I felt the blood drain from my face. What video? The one of you confronting Jenna, he said, pulling out his phone. I uploaded it to a secure server. But someone must have gotten a copy. It's been retweeted thousands of times. The comments are brutal. I took the phone from him, my hands trembling, and scrolled through the feed. The video quality was poor, grainy, but the audio was clear. You could hear every word of our exchange, every threat, every accusation. The comments were a mix of sympathy and vitriol, with people taking sides, speculating about the truth, demanding answers. Nurse Nicole is a hero for speaking out, Jen is a snake. But so is Robert. They deserve each other. This is why I hate hospitals. Corrupt to the core. Where's the proof? This is just hearsay. I scrolled past the comments, my stomach churning. I'd known this would happen, but seeing it in black and white was different. Seeing the way people were talking about me, about Robert, about the hospital. It was a nightmare come to life. We have to take it down, I said, my voice urgent. We can't, Liam said, taking the phone back. It's already been shared too many times. The genie's out of the bottle. The only thing we can do now is control the narrative. How? I asked, my mind racing. We go to the press, he said, his expression serious. We give them the real story. The passport, the embezzlement, the connection to Victor Rask. We make it clear that this isn't about a personal vendetta. It's about corruption, about criminal activity, about a man who's been using his position to launder money and traffic people. I stared at him, my heart pounding. Going to the press was a gamble, a calculated risk. If it worked, we could expose the truth and bring the perpetrators to justice. If it failed, we could be discredited, ridiculed, even prosecuted. What if they don't believe us? I asked, my voice trembling. They will, Liam said, his voice firm. Because we have proof. And because the public deserves to know the truth. I thought about the danger. About the police protection. About the man named Victor Rask. I thought about the way my life had been turned upside down in less than a week. And I knew that I had no choice. All right, I said, my jaw set. Let's do it. Liam and I spent the rest of the day preparing our statement, working with Detective Heller to ensure that we didn't reveal any sensitive information. We decided to approach the Chronicle, a local newspaper with a reputation for investigative journalism. They'd been critical of the hospital in the past, and we hoped they'd be receptive to our story. We met with the lead reporter, a woman named Sarah Jenkins, in a secure conference room at the police station. She was in her 30s, with short cropped hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. She listened intently as we laid out our case, her expression unreadable. When we finished, she said, "This is explosive stuff. If it's true, it could bring down the entire hospital administration. But I need more than your word. I need evidence. Hard evidence." I reached into my purse and pulled out the lockbox, setting it on the table. "This is everything we have. The passport, the USB drive, the ledgers. It's all in there." Sarah opened the box and examined the contents, her eyes widening. "Victor Rask," she murmured. "This is huge. It gets worse," Liam said, his voice grim. "Rask isn't just a mobster. He's a trafficker. We believe he's been using the hospital to smuggle women and children out of the country. The research fund was just a front, a way to move money without raising suspicion." Sarah's expression hardened. "And you have proof of this?" "We have the ledgers," I said. "They detail the transactions, the dates, the amounts. It's all there. All we need is someone to analyze it." Sarah nodded, already typing notes on her laptop. "I'll need to verify the information with my sources. But if it checks out," she didn't finish the sentence. But I knew what she meant. If it checked out, the story would break. And the fallout would be catastrophic. "How soon can you publish?" I asked, my voice urgent. 3 days, she said, without hesitation. "That's the earliest I can guarantee. But I'll do my best to move it up if I can." I nodded, relief washing over me. 3 days. It wasn't ideal. but it was better than nothing. And in the meantime, we had to prepare for the backlash. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing incessantly. I grabbed it from the nightstand and saw dozens of missed calls and text messages. My heart sank when I saw the caller ID, Robert. I hesitated, then answered. My voice cold. What do you want? Nicole. Thank God. He said, his voice frantic. You need to come to the hospital. Now. Why? I asked. My stomach churning. It's chaos. He said. The board is meeting. They're talking about suspending me. They're talking about shutting down the research department. You have to come. You have to tell them what you know. I thought about the lockbox. About the passport. About the man named Victor Rask. I thought about the way Robert had lied to me. Manipulated me. Betrayed me. And I knew that I couldn't help him. Not anymore. I can't. I said. My voice steady. I have nothing to say to them. Nicole. Please. He said. His voice cracking. I love you. I need you. You're the only one who can save me. I closed my eyes. My heart breaking all over again. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that he could change. That we could fix this. But the evidence was stacked against him. The passport. The embezzlement. The connection to Rask. Goodbye. Robert. I said. And hung up. I powered off my phone and set it on the nightstand. Then got out of bed and started packing. I didn't know where I was going. But I knew I couldn't stay here. Not with the police outside. Not with the press sniffing around. Not with the danger closing in. I threw a few changes of clothes into a bag, along with my laptop and the lockbox. I added a bottle of water and some granola bars, then zipped it up and slung it over my shoulder. As I reached for the doorknob, I heard a knock. I froze, my heart pounding. Ms. Marshall. A voice called from outside. It's Officer Reyes. We need to talk. I took a deep breath and opened the door. Officer Reyes was standing there. His expression serious. What is it? I asked. My voice trembling. We've received a credible threat. He said. His eyes scanning the room. Someone's targeting you. We need to get you out of here. Now. I nodded. Relief washing over me. I wasn't alone. I wasn't helpless. I had allies. I had a plan. Where are we going? I asked. A safe house. He said. It's already been arranged. You'll be protected there until the story breaks. Until it's safe to come out. I followed him to the waiting car. My bag clutched in my hand. As we drove away from the house, I felt a strange mix of fear and relief. I was leaving behind everything I'd ever known. Everything I'd ever loved. But I was also taking the first step toward freedom. Toward justice. Toward the truth. And as the city skyline faded into the distance, I knew that I was finally ready to fight back. The safe house was a small, nondescript ranch on the outskirts of town. It was sparsely furnished, with a worn sofa, a kitchenette, and a single bedroom. But it was clean. And it was safe. And for the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. Officer Reyes introduced me to the other officer on duty, a woman named Officer Patel, then left us alone. I unpacked my bag and set the lockbox on the coffee table. My mind racing. You hungry? Officer Patel asked. Her voice friendly. I shook my head. My stomach too tied up in knots to eat. Do you know anything about the threat? I asked. My voice low. Officer Patel hesitated, then said. It's believed to be related to the investigation. Someone doesn't want the story to break. They're willing to do whatever it takes to stop it. I nodded, my heart pounding. I'd known the danger was real. But hearing it confirmed was different. It made it personal. It made it immediate. What happens now? I asked. Now we wait. Officer Patel said. Her expression serious. We monitor the situation. We assess the risks. And we prepare for the worst. I nodded, my hands trembling. I'd faced death before. In the ER. In the operating room. But this was different. This was personal. This was my life. My future. My freedom. I thought about the lockbox. About the passport. About the man named Victor Rask. I thought about the way my life had been turned upside down in less than a week. And I knew that I couldn't let them win. I couldn't let them silence me. I reached for the lockbox and opened it, staring at the contents. The passport, the USB drive, the ledgers, proof of their crimes, proof of their corruption, proof of their guilt. And then I thought about the press conference, about the story breaking, about the truth coming out. I thought about the way people would react, the way the world would change. And I knew that I was ready. I closed the lockbox and set it on the coffee table, then sat down on the sofa, my back straight, my chin high. I was ready to fight, ready to win, ready to take back my life. And as the sun set outside the window, I felt a strange sense of peace. The storm was coming, but I was ready for it. The first thing I heard when I woke up was the sound of breaking glass. I sat bolt upright in the narrow bed, my heart hammering against my ribs. The safe house was dark, the only light coming from the street lamp outside the window. Its beam sliced into the room by the blinds. For a second, I thought I was back in my own bedroom, that the last week had been a nightmare. But the sour taste of fear in my mouth told me otherwise. Then came the second sound, a low, deliberate thud, like something heavy hitting the front door. Officer Patel was already moving, her hand on her holster as she crossed the small living room in 3 quick strides. "Stay here," she whispered, her voice tense. I nodded, my hands shaking as I reached for the lockbox on the coffee table. It was still there, the cheap metal cool against my palm. I didn't remember closing it the night before, but I must have. Somewhere in the haze of exhaustion and dread, I'd secured it without realizing. Another crash, this time louder, more violent. The front door shuddered in its frame, and I heard the distinct sound of splintering wood. "Police! Get down!" Officer Patel shouted, her voice sharp, authoritative. I dropped to the floor behind the sofa, my knees hitting the carpet hard. The room erupted into noise, shouting, the sharp report of gunfire, the shattering of more glass. I curled up, clutching the lockbox to my chest, and squeezed my eyes shut. I couldn't look. I couldn't move. I could only listen. The gunfire stopped as suddenly as it had started. The shouting continued, lower now, more controlled. Footsteps approached the bedroom door, and I held my breath. "Clear," Officer Patel's voice. Relieved. I waited a beat, then slowly stood up, my legs trembling. Officer Patel was crouched by the front window, her weapon drawn, scanning the darkness outside. The front door hung open, a gaping hole where the lock had been. A pool of blood spread across the threshold, dark and glossy in the moonlight. "Are you okay?" she asked without turning around. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. My ears were ringing, and my hands were sticky with sweat. I looked down at the lockbox, still clutched in my arms, and felt a wave of nausea. They'd come for it. They tried to break in. They tried to kill us. What happened? I asked finally, my voice barely audible. Officer Patel stood up, holstering her weapon. It was a drive-by. 2 shooters. They fired through the front window, then tried to breach the door. I returned fire. They retreated. I stared at her, my mind reeling. A drive-by, in a quiet suburban neighborhood. This wasn't just about intimidation anymore. This was an execution attempt. They knew we were here, I said, my voice rising. They knew where to find us. Officer Patel's expression hardened. "We'll figure that out. But first, we need to get you out of here. Now." She grabbed her radio and called for backup. Her voice clipped and efficient. Within minutes, the safe house was swarming with police cars, their lights strobing against the walls. A forensics team arrived to collect evidence, and a detective I didn't recognize took my statement. But none of it registered. My mind was stuck on one thing, the lockbox. It was still in my hands. Its contents a secret I was terrified to lose. I kept glancing at it, as if checking to make sure it was still there, as if its presence could somehow protect me. By the time the sun rose, I was sitting in the back of a black SUV, sandwiched between 2 plainclothes officers. We were speeding through the city, the windows tinted, the engine purring like a contented animal. Officer Patel was in the front passenger seat, her phone pressed to her ear, her voice low and urgent. Yes, sir, she was saying. We have visual confirmation. The package was delivered at 0400 hours. No witnesses. I strained to hear the response. But the signal was garbled. Whatever she was reporting, it was classified, sensitive, important. Copy that, she said finally, ending the call. We're 5 minutes out. I looked out the window, my stomach churning. We were headed for the offices of the Chronicle, the newspaper that had agreed to publish our story. The building loomed in the distance, a monolith of glass and steel, its surface reflecting the morning light. Why are we going there? I asked, my voice trembling. Officer Patel turned to look at me, her expression serious. Because the story's breaking today. First edition hits the stands at 0600. We need to be there when it drops. I felt the blood drain from my face. The story, the exposé, the truth. It was finally happening. And I was terrified. What if they come after us there? I asked, my mind flashing back to the safe house, to the sound of breaking glass. They won't, Officer Patel said, her voice confident. The building is secure. Federal marshals are on site, and the press will be there to witness it. They can't risk another incident with so many eyes on them. I nodded, trying to believe her. But the fear was a constant hum in the background, a bass note that refused to fade. We pulled up to the loading dock behind the building, and the driver escorted us inside through a side entrance. The lobby was bustling with activity. Reporters and photographers moving in a coordinated frenzy. A tall man in a suit approached us, his badge identifying him as Special Agent Carter from the Department of Justice. Ms. Marshall, he asked, extending his hand. I shook it, my grip weak. Is this absolutely necessary? I asked, gesturing to the chaos around us. Agent Carter's expression was sympathetic but firm. I'm afraid so. The Attorney General wants a joint statement. You, Mr. O'Connor, and myself, together. For the record. I nodded, my heart sinking. This was it. The moment of truth. The culmination of everything we'd fought for. Everything we'd risked. And I wasn't ready. The press conference was held in the main auditorium, a cavernous space with stadium seating and a bank of microphones at the front. The room was packed. Every seat filled, with reporters spilling into the aisles. Cameras lined the walls, their red recording lights glowing like malevolent eyes. I sat at the center table, flanked by Liam and Agent Carter. My hands were clasped in my lap, the lockbox at my feet, hidden beneath the tablecloth. I could feel its weight, a constant reminder of the danger we were in. The mayor took the stage first, his expression grave. Good morning, he said, his voice amplified by the microphone. I'm joined today by representatives from the Department of Justice, the State Police, and the Office of the Inspector General. We are here to address the allegations of criminal misconduct at City General Hospital. These allegations are serious, they are disturbing, and they demand a thorough, independent investigation. He paused, allowing the cameras to capture the moment, then introduced Agent Carter, who stepped up to the podium. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Agent Carter said, his voice steady. As of 0600 this morning, the FBI has launched a formal investigation into suspected money laundering and human trafficking activities at City General Hospital. These activities are alleged to involve high-ranking hospital officials and members of a transnational criminal organization. We have seized financial records, electronic communications, and other evidence pursuant to a federal warrant. We are committed to pursuing justice in this matter, and we will not rest until those responsible are held accountable. The room erupted into a flurry of questions, the reporters shouting over each other in their eagerness to be heard. Agent Carter held up his hand, silencing them. I will take a few questions, he said, nodding toward a reporter in the front row. The reporter stood up, her voice sharp. Can you confirm that Dr. Robert Marshall is among those being investigated? Agent Carter's expression remained impassive. I cannot comment on specific individuals at this time. Suffice it to say that the investigation is ongoing, and all relevant parties will be held accountable. Another reporter stood up. What about the allegations of sexual exploitation? Are there victims we should be concerned about? Agent Carter's jaw tightened. We are aware of those allegations, and we are treating them with the utmost seriousness. Our primary concern is the safety and well-being of any potential victims. We are working closely with our partners at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children to identify and assist anyone who may have been harmed. The questions continued, each one more invasive than the last. I sat there, my hands trembling, my mind a whirlwind of fear and relief. The truth was out. The world knew. And there was no going back. Finally, Agent Carter stepped away from the podium, and Liam took his place. He looked out at the crowd, his expression somber. I want to thank the investigators, the journalists, and the whistleblowers who made this moment possible, he said. Their courage has exposed a cancer at the heart of our healthcare system, a cancer that has festered for too long. Today, we begin the process of healing, of accountability, of justice. He paused, allowing his words to sink in, then looked directly at me. But this victory belongs to one person above all others. Nicole Marshall. A nurse. A wife. A hero. She risked everything to expose the truth. And because of her, countless lives will be saved. The room erupted into applause. The sound thunderous. Overwhelming. I felt my cheeks flush. My eyes sting with tears. I wanted to stand up. To acknowledge the applause. To accept the praise. But I couldn't. I was too scared, too overwhelmed, too aware of the danger that still surrounded me. Liam stepped aside, and I stood up, my legs shaking. I walked to the podium, my heart pounding, and looked out at the sea of faces. Cameras flashed, blinding me, and I had to squint to see the first row. I have only one thing to say, I began, my voice trembling. The truth matters, no matter the cost, no matter the risk. No matter the sacrifice. And if we are brave enough to seek it, to speak it, to live it, then we can change the world. The applause was deafening. I stood there for a moment, letting it wash over me, then turned and walked off the stage. My head held high. The celebration was short-lived. By noon, the hospital was in lockdown. Police cars ringed the building, their lights strobing against the windows. SWAT teams moved through the corridors, evacuating patients and staff. News helicopters circled overhead, their cameras trained on the chaos below. I watched it all unfold from a secure room in the Department of Justice building, my hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had gone cold. Agent Carter had ordered a security detail for me, 2 agents stationed outside the door at all times. I wasn't allowed to leave without an escort. I wasn't allowed to speak to anyone without clearance. I wasn't even allowed to look out the window. They are bringing in Dr. Marshall for questioning, Agent Carter said, his voice grim. His refusing to cooperate. Claims he's innocent. Claims he had no knowledge of the trafficking operation. I stared at him, my stomach churning. Robert. Here. Now. The man I'd loved. The man I'd trusted. The man who'd betrayed me in ways I was still struggling to comprehend. What happens now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Agent Carter hesitated, then said, that depends on you. He's asking to see you. Says he has information that could help the investigation. Says he needs to explain. I thought about the passport, about the embezzlement, about the man named Victor Rask. I thought about the way Robert had lied to me, manipulated me, betrayed me, and I knew that I couldn't face him. Not yet. Not until I was ready. I can't, I said, my voice shaking. I'm not ready. Agent Carter nodded, his expression understanding. I'll tell him that. But he's persistent. He won't give up easily. I nodded, my mind racing. I knew he was right. Robert would keep pushing, keep demanding, keep trying to manipulate me. But I wasn't that person anymore. I wasn't the naive, trusting wife who'd fallen for his lies. I was stronger now, wiser, more resilient, and I was ready to fight back. The interrogation took place in a sterile room on the top floor of the DOJ building. I watched from behind the one-way mirror. My hands clenched into fists. Robert sat across from Agent Carter and another agent I didn't recognize. His face pale. His eyes red-rimmed. "I want to speak to my wife," he said. His voice hoarse. "Alone." Agent Carter shook his head. "That's not possible." "Then I'm not saying another word," Robert said, crossing his arms. The two agents exchanged a glance. Then Agent Carter said, "Fine. 5 minutes. That's it." He stood up and motioned for me to follow him. I hesitated, then nodded, my heart pounding. This was it. The moment of truth. The confrontation I'd been dreading since the moment I'd discovered the passport. We entered the interrogation room. And Robert looked up, his expression softening when he saw me. "Nicole," he said, his voice breaking. "Thank God. You're here." I stood by the door. My arms crossed. My expression cold. "What do you want?" "Robert." He stood up, his hands trembling. "I want to explain. I want you to understand. I never meant for any of this to happen. I never meant to hurt you. You didn't mean to," I said, my voice rising. "You didn't mean to lie to me, cheat on me, put me in danger. You didn't mean to steal from the hospital, launder money, traffic women and children. You didn't mean to destroy my life." His face crumpled, and he sank back into his chair. "I didn't know," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I swear to God, I didn't know. They told me it was a legitimate investment opportunity. They told me the money was clean. They told me you'd be safe." "They?" I asked, my voice sharp. "Who's they?" "Victor Rask," he said, his eyes downcast. "He approached me 2 years ago. Said he could help me expand my research. Said he had connections. Said he could get me funding that the hospital wouldn't approve." I was desperate. "Nicole." The grants weren't coming through. The pressure was mounting. I thought I was doing the right thing. "You thought stealing was the right thing?" I asked, incredulous. "I didn't think it was stealing," he said, his voice pleading. "I thought it was borrowing. I thought I'd pay it back. I thought I could control it." "You thought wrong," I said, my voice cold. "You were played, Robert. Used. Manipulated. And you let them do it. You let them use you. Use me. Use the hospital. Use the patients. You're just as guilty as they are." He looked up at me, his eyes filled with tears. "I love you, Nicole. I never stopped loving you. Even when I was with her. Even when I was lying to you. I never stopped loving you." I stared at him, my heart breaking all over again. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to forgive him. But the evidence was stacked against him. The passport. The embezzlement. The trafficking. The lies. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice barely audible. "But I can't." With that, I turned and walked out of the room, leaving him alone with his guilt and his grief. The fallout was immediate and devastating. By evening, the hospital board had convened an emergency meeting and voted to suspend Robert pending the outcome of the investigation. The mayor held a press conference to announce the creation of a task force to oversee the transition. And the governor pledged to allocate additional resources to ensure continuity of care. But the damage was done. The hospital's reputation was in tatters. Patients were transferring to other facilities. And staff were resigning in droves. The stock price plummeted. And the bond rating was downgraded. City General was collapsing under the weight of its own corruption. And through it all, I remained in hiding. Protected by the DOJ. Haunted by the choices I'd made. I thought about the lockbox. About the passport. About the man named Victor Rask. I thought about the way my life had been turned upside down in less than a week. And I knew that I couldn't let them win. I couldn't let them silence me. I thought about the press conference. About the applause. About the way people had looked at me. With admiration and respect. I thought about the way I'd felt. Standing up there. Telling the truth. And I knew that I was ready. Ready to fight. Ready to win. Ready to take back my life. And as the sun set outside the window, I felt a strange sense of peace. The storm was coming. But I was ready for it. The first sign that something was wrong was the silence. I'd been at the safe house for 3 days, moving between the bedroom, the living room, and the tiny kitchenette like a ghost. The 2 agents outside the front door were a constant presence, their voices low and professional when they checked in. The blinds were always drawn, the curtains always closed. I wasn't allowed to use the internet, the TV, or even the landline without permission. I was a prisoner in a gilded cage. And the only thing keeping me sane was the knowledge that the story had broken. That the world knew the truth. That justice was finally within reach. But on the 4th morning, the routine shifted. I was sitting on the couch, a book in my lap, when the front door opened without warning. I looked up, startled, and saw Officer Reyes step inside, his expression grim. "We have a problem," he said, his voice low. I stood up, my heart pounding. What kind of problem? He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out his radio and spoke into it. His voice clipped. "Unit 4. We have a breach. Repeat. We have a breach." Before I could react, 2 men in tactical gear rushed into the room, their weapons drawn. They moved quickly, efficiently, sweeping the corners, checking the closets, securing the exits. Officer Patel appeared behind them, her gun drawn, her eyes scanning the room. "Get down!" she shouted, gesturing for me to lie on the floor. I dropped to the carpet, my hands over my head, my mind racing. This wasn't a drill. This wasn't a routine security check. This was real. This was happening. The agents secured the room, then lowered their weapons. Officer Patel crouched beside me, her voice calm but urgent. "Stay here. Don't move. Don't speak. Understand?" I nodded, my throat too tight to answer. She stood up and conferred with Officer Reyes in a low voice. I strained to hear, but their words were indistinct, muffled by the tension in the air. Whatever they were saying, it wasn't good. After a few minutes, Officer Reyes approached me, his expression serious. "We've received intel that Jenna Caldwell is planning to abduct you," he said, his voice low. "She's working with remnants of Rask's network. They believe you have the final piece of evidence. They're willing to do whatever it takes to get it." I felt the blood drain from my face. Jenna, of course. She'd been quiet since the exposé broke, laying low while the authorities scrambled to contain the fallout. But now she was making her move. And she was coming for me. "Where is she?" I asked, my voice trembling. Officer Reyes hesitated, then said, "We don't know. But we have a team tracking her movements. We'll find her. We'll stop her. But in the meantime, you're not safe here. We're relocating you. Now." I nodded, my mind a whirlwind of fear and adrenaline. I'd been waiting for this moment, dreading it, preparing for it, and now that it was here, I felt strangely calm. I was ready. I was ready to fight, ready to win, ready to take back my life. The relocation was swift and efficient. Within the hour, I was bundled into an unmarked SUV, sandwiched between 2 agents in civilian clothes. The safe house was left empty, its windows dark, its doors locked. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to remember. We drove for what felt like hours, the city giving way to countryside, the buildings shrinking, the trees growing taller. The agents didn't speak, their eyes fixed on the road, their hands resting on their weapons. I stared out the window, my mind racing, my heart pounding. "Where are we going?" I asked finally, my voice barely above a whisper. The agent in the front passenger seat glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "A secure location. Off the grid. You'll be safe there." I nodded, but I didn't feel safe. I felt exposed, vulnerable, hunted. The SUV finally turned onto a narrow dirt road, the tires kicking up dust, the engine roaring in protest. The trees closed in around us, their branches forming a canopy that blocked out the sun. The air grew cooler, damper, the scent of pine and earth thick in my lungs. We came to a stop in front of a small cabin, its log walls weathered and grey, its roof sagging under the weight of the snow. A thin plume of smoke curled from the stone chimney. The only sign of life. This is it. The driver said. His voice low. I followed the agents out of the SUV. My boots crunching against the gravel. The air was crisp. The kind of cold that bit at your skin and settled in your bones. I pulled my coat tighter around me. My hands shaking. The cabin was rustic but clean. With a stone fireplace. A worn sofa. And a kitchen that looked like it hadn't been used in decades. A single lamp burned on the coffee table. Its light casting long shadows across the walls. Make yourself comfortable, Officer Reyes said. His voice gruff. We'll be outside. I nodded, watching as they disappeared into the woods. Their figures swallowed by the trees. The door closed behind them with a soft click. And I was alone. I dropped my bag by the door and wandered into the living room. My eyes scanning the room. There was a bookshelf against one wall. Filled with dog-eared paperbacks and dusty encyclopedias. A framed photograph hung above the fireplace. Depicting a smiling couple I assumed were the owners. A Navajo rug covered the floor. Its patterns faded but intricate. I sat down on the sofa. My legs trembling. And pulled the lockbox from my bag. It was still there. Its contents a secret I was terrified to lose. I ran my fingers over the lid. My mind flashing back to the confrontation with Robert. To the press conference. To the raid on the hospital. I thought about Jenna. About the trap she'd set. About the danger that still surrounded me. And then I heard it. A soft knock at the door. I froze. My heart pounding. The knock came again. Louder this time. More insistent. I stood up. My legs shaking. And crept toward the door. My hand on the knob. Who is it? I asked. My voice trembling. It's me. A familiar voice said. Jenna. I felt the blood drain from my face. Jenna. Here. Now. The woman who'd started this nightmare. The woman who'd humiliated me. Betrayed me. Tried to destroy me. She was standing on the other side of the door. Her voice sweet. Innocent. But I wasn't fooled. I knew better. Go away. I said. My voice steady despite the fear coiling in my stomach. Nicole. Please. She said. Her voice pleading. I need to talk to you. Alone. We have nothing to talk about. I said. Turning away from the door. You don't understand. She said. Her voice rising. This isn't about you. It's about them. About what they're planning. About what they're going to do. I hesitated. My hand on the doorknob. She couldn't know about the relocation. She couldn't know I was here. Unless someone had told her. Unless someone had betrayed us. What are you talking about? I asked. My voice cautious. Victor. She said. Her voice urgent. He's not finished. He's sending someone. Someone dangerous. Someone who won't stop until they have what they came for. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Victor Rask. Of course. He was the puppet master. The spider at the center of the web. And if he was sending someone, then the danger was real. Immediate. Imminent. What do they want? I asked. My voice barely above a whisper. The ledger. She said. The final piece of evidence. The one you stole from Robert's office. They believe it contains the names of the buyers. The destinations. The payments. Everything they need to disappear forever. I felt the blood drain from my face. The ledger. Of course. That's what she was after. That's what they were all after. And if they got it, if they destroyed it, then the investigation would collapse. The trail would go cold. And they would walk free. I don't have it. I said. My voice steady despite the lie. Don't lie to me. Jenna said. Her voice sharp. I know you have it. I saw you take it. I saw you hide it. And I know where you've been. I know everything. I stared at the door. My mind racing. She couldn't know about the relocation unless someone had told her. Unless someone had betrayed us. Unless Liam had been compromised. The thought sent a chill down my spine. Liam was my closest ally. My confidant. My rock. He'd helped me expose the truth. He'd risked everything to protect me. He wouldn't betray me. He couldn't. Would he? Open the door. Nicole. Jenna said. Her voice soft. Please. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to help you. To warn you. To save you. I hesitated, my hand on the doorknob. Part of me wanted to believe her. Part of me wanted to trust her. Part of me wanted to open the door and hear her out. But the rational part of my brain knew better. Knew that Jenna was a liar. Knew that she was dangerous. Knew that she was working with Rask. Working against me. Go away, I said, my voice firm. Fine, she said, her voice hardening. Have it your way. But don't say I didn't warn you. I heard footsteps retreating. Then the sound of a car engine starting. I waited a beat. Then crept to the window and peeked through the blinds. A black SUV was pulling away from the cabin. Its taillights disappearing into the trees. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding and sank to the floor. My legs trembling. Jenna had been here. She knew I was alone. She knew about the ledger. And she'd warned me about Rask's plans. Was it a trap? Or was it the truth? I didn't know. But I knew one thing for certain, I couldn't stay here. Not anymore. Not with the danger closing in. Not with the betrayal gnawing at my soul. I grabbed my bag and the lockbox and crept to the door. The agents were still outside, their silhouettes visible through the trees. I stepped out into the cold, my heart pounding, and approached them cautiously. Something happened, I said, my voice trembling. Jenna was here. She knows about the ledger. She says Rask is sending someone. The agents exchanged a glance. Then Officer Reyes said, "We need to move. Now." I nodded, relief washing over me. I wasn't alone. I wasn't helpless. I had allies. I had a plan. And as we disappeared into the woods, I felt a strange sense of calm. The storm was coming, but I was ready for it. The journey to the extraction point was treacherous. We hiked through the woods for hours. The terrain uneven. The air growing colder with every step. The agents moved quickly, their eyes scanning the horizon, their hands resting on their weapons. I struggled to keep up, my boots slipping on the ice, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Finally, we arrived at a clearing, where a helicopter was waiting, its blades spinning, its engine roaring. The agents escorted me to the aircraft, their movements efficient, practiced. I climbed inside, my legs shaking, and buckled myself into the seat. The helicopter lifted off with a jolt, the wind buffeting the cabin, the trees shrinking below. I stared out the window, my mind racing, my heart pounding. We were flying south, toward the city, toward the heart of the storm. Where are we going? I asked the pilot, my voice barely audible over the noise of the rotor. A secure facility, the pilot said, his voice crackling through the intercom. Outside of Baltimore. You'll be safe there. I nodded, relief washing over me. Safe. The word felt foreign, like it belonged to someone else's life. But I was ready to believe it, ready to embrace it, ready to fight for it. The extraction point was a sprawling estate on the Chesapeake Bay. Its Georgian facade elegant but austere. The helicopter landed on the manicured lawn, its blades slowing to a halt. A team of agents in tactical gear emerged from the main house, their weapons drawn, their expressions grim. "Welcome to Haven," one of them said. His voice clipped. "You'll be briefed shortly." I followed them inside, my boots echoing against the marble floor. The interior was opulent but sterile, with Persian rugs, crystal chandeliers, and oil paintings of long-dead ancestors. It felt like a museum, a monument to wealth and privilege. And it felt like a prison. I was shown to a suite on the second floor. Its furnishings luxurious but impersonal. A king-sized bed. A marble bathroom. A sitting area with a fireplace and a wet bar. It was everything I didn't need and nothing I wanted. The lead agent, a woman named Agent Brooks, stood in the doorway. Her expression serious. "You'll be safe here," she said. "But you're not alone. We have assets in place to monitor your surroundings. Any attempt to harm you will be met with lethal force." I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. I was grateful for their protection, but I resented their control, resented the way they'd taken over my life, my choices, my agency. I was a pawn in their game, a cog in their machine, and I hated it. "When will I be debriefed?" I asked. my voice steady despite the resentment simmering beneath the surface. Immediately, Agent Brooks said, "Follow me." She led me down a series of hallways and staircases, past guards and surveillance cameras, until we arrived at a conference room on the ground floor. The room was stark and utilitarian, with a long table, a projector screen, and a dozen chairs. A man in a suit sat at the head of the table, his badge identifying him as Assistant Director Morris from the FBI. "Ms. Marshall," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you for joining us." I shook his hand, my grip weak. "What's this about?" "We've received credible intelligence that Jenna Caldwell is planning to intercept the ledger," he said, his voice grim. "She believes it contains the identities of the trafficking ring's clients. She intends to sell it to the highest bidder." I felt the blood drain from my face. The ledger. Of course. That's what she was after. That's what they were all after. And if she got it, if she sold it, then the investigation would collapse. The trail would go cold. And they would walk free. "Where is it?" I asked, my voice trembling. "We don't know," Morris said. "But we believe it's still in your possession. Hidden somewhere on your property." I stared at him, my mind racing. The ledger. It wasn't in the lockbox. It wasn't in my bag. It wasn't anywhere I could think of. Unless I'd hidden it somewhere else. Unless I'd forgotten about it. Unless Robert had taken it. The thought sent a chill down my spine. Robert. Of course. He'd been obsessed with the ledger. Obsessed with proving his innocence. He'd stolen it from his office. Hidden it away. Protected it like a dragon guarding its treasure. And if Jenna knew about it, if she tracked him down, then she had it. She had the final piece of evidence. And she was going to sell it. To the highest bidder. "We need to find her," I said, my voice urgent. "We need to stop her." Morris nodded, his expression grim. "That's why we're deploying a tactical team. We'll apprehend her at the exchange point. We'll recover the ledger. And we'll dismantle the trafficking ring once and for all." I nodded, relief washing over me. Finally, we were taking action. Finally, we were fighting back. Finally, we were going to end this. The tactical team departed at dawn, their vehicles disappearing into the mist. I watched them go from the window, my heart pounding, my hands shaking. I felt a strange mix of fear and anticipation. Fear for their safety, anticipation for the moment when Jenna would be caught, when the ledger would be recovered, when the truth would finally come out. But as the hours dragged on, my anxiety grew. Where were they? What were they doing? Were they safe? Was Jenna already gone? Had she sold the ledger? Destroyed it? Hidden it? I paced the length of the suite, my mind racing, my heart pounding. I thought about Robert, about the passport, about the man named Victor Rask. I thought about the way my life had been turned upside down in less than a week. And I knew that I couldn't let them win. I couldn't let them silence me. I thought about the press conference, about the applause, about the way people had looked at me, with admiration and respect. I thought about the way I'd felt, standing up there, telling the truth. And I knew that I was ready to fight, ready to win, ready to take back my life. And as the sun set outside the window, I felt a strange sense of peace. The storm was coming, but I was ready for it. The call came at 3:17 a.m. I was dreaming of coffee stains and shattered glass when my phone vibrated across the nightstand. I woke instantly, my body coiled like a spring, and fumbled for the device. The screen glowed with Agent Brooks' name. I answered before the first ring finished. "They have her," she said without preamble. "Jenna Caldwell. The exchange went down 10 minutes ago. We recovered the ledger. It's intact." I sat up, the sheets tangled around my legs, my heart pounding. "Is she talking?" "Enough," Brooks said. "Names, dates, locations. She's singing like a bird. But there's a complication." I closed my eyes, bracing myself. "What kind of complication?" "Victor Rask is dead," she said. "Killed in a shootout during the raid. His second-in-command is in custody. But there's a third party involved. Someone we didn't anticipate." I felt the blood freeze in my veins. Who? We don't know yet, Brooks admitted, but the evidence points to someone inside the hospital. Someone with access to the research fund. Someone who helped facilitate the transfers. I thought of Robert. Of his pale face in the interrogation room. Of the tears in his eyes when he'd begged for my forgiveness. I thought of the passport. The embezzlement. The way he'd caved to Jenna's threats. And I knew the truth before she even said it. It's Robert, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Brooks was silent for a long moment. Then she said, we're looking into it. But the evidence is damning. Financial records. Email correspondence. Witness statements. It's all there. I hung up the phone and lay back on the pillows. Staring at the ceiling. The room felt colder than before. The air heavy with the weight of what I'd just learned. Robert was guilty. Not just of embezzlement. Not just of negligence. But of complicity. Of collaboration. Of betrayal. And I had loved him. The thought was a knife in my chest. Sharp and precise. I pressed my hands to my sternum, willing the pain to ease. But it only grew sharper. I thought about the life we'd built. The dreams we'd shared. The promises we'd made. And I realized that none of it had been real. Not really. Just a house of cards. Waiting for someone to blow it down. I stayed in bed until dawn. Staring at the lightening sky. Listening to the distant hum of the Chesapeake Bay. When the sun finally rose, I got up. Showered. Dressed. And packed my bag. I didn't need much. Just a few changes of clothes. My laptop. And the lockbox. The rest could stay behind. Agent Brooks met me in the lobby at 7:00 a.m. Her expression grim. We've arranged transport back to the city. She said, the director wants to debrief you personally. I nodded. My face expressionless. I was beyond shock now. Beyond grief. I was numb. Hollow. Ready for whatever came next. The ride back to Baltimore was quiet. The tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Brooks didn't speak. Her eyes fixed on the road. I stared out the window, watching the landscape blur past. My mind a blank slate. I thought about the ledger. About the names and dates and locations it contained. I thought about the lives it represented. The suffering it documented. The justice it promised. And I felt a flicker of hope. A small, fragile thing, but present nonetheless. When we arrived at the FBI field office, I was escorted to a conference room on the top floor. Director Langston was waiting for me, his silver hair gleaming in the fluorescent light, his expression unreadable. He stood when I entered, his handshake firm but impersonal. Ms. Marshall, he said, thank you for coming. I nodded, taking a seat at the long table. Brooks closed the door behind her, leaving us alone. Langston pulled a file from his briefcase and set it on the table. We've reviewed the evidence, he said, his voice measured. The ledger confirms your allegations. The research fund was used to launder money for Victor Rask's network. The transfers were disguised as equipment purchases and clinical trials. The women and children were transported out of the country under the guise of medical tourism. I stared at the file, my hands clenched in my lap. And Robert. Langston flipped open the folder and slid a photograph across the table. It was a grainy surveillance image, taken from a security camera at JFK Airport. Robert and Jenna were standing at a departure gate, their arms linked, their faces unreadable. He fled the country 2 days ago, Langston said, destination unknown. But we have reason to believe he's headed to Switzerland. He has accounts there, assets, connections. I felt the blood drain from my face. Robert was gone. He'd abandoned me. Abandoned the investigation. Abandoned the truth. And he'd taken the ledger with him. The ledger, I said, my voice trembling. Is it secure? Langston hesitated, then said, we recovered a copy. The original is missing. We believe Robert took it with him. I closed my eyes, my heart breaking all over again. The ledger was the key to everything. Without it, the case would collapse. The ringleaders would walk free. The victims would never be found. And it would all be Robert's fault. We'll get it back, Langston said, his voice firm. We have agents in Zurich, Geneva, Basel. We'll track him down. We'll recover the ledger. And we'll bring him to justice. I nodded. But I didn't feel hopeful. I felt defeated. Broken. Lost. Langston stood up, signaling the end of the meeting. You've done remarkable work, Ms. Marshall. The department is grateful. The public is grateful. You've exposed a cancer in our healthcare system. You've given voice to the voiceless. And for that, you will be commended. I forced a smile, but it felt fake. Hollow. Thank you, I said, my voice barely audible. He extended his hand, and I shook it, my grip weak. Then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a soft click. I sat there for a long moment, staring at the empty chair, the closed door, the photograph of Robert and Jenna, and then I stood up, gathered my things, and walked out of the room. The ride back to the city was a blur. I sat in the back of the car, my bag on my lap, my mind racing. I thought about the ledger, about Robert, about the life I'd lost. I thought about the way he'd looked at me in the interrogation room, the tears in his eyes, the plea in his voice. I thought about the way I'd felt, standing up there at the press conference, telling the truth. And I realized that I was done. Done with the lies. Done with the betrayal. Done with the man who'd broken me. When we arrived at my apartment, I let myself in, the key turning smoothly in the lock. The place was exactly as I'd left it, the furniture covered in sheets, the air stale and dusty. I dropped my bag by the door and wandered into the living room, my eyes scanning the room. The lockbox was still there, on the coffee table where I'd left it. I picked it up, its metal cool against my palm, and sat down on the sofa. I stared at it for a long moment, then opened it, revealing the contents, the passport, the USB drive, the ledgers, the evidence, the proof, the truth. I removed the USB drive and inserted it into my laptop, the screen flickering to life. I navigated to the encrypted folder, entered the password, and waited as the files loaded. There they were, the spreadsheets, the transaction logs, the flight manifests, the names and dates and locations, the evidence I'd risked everything to obtain. I scrolled through the files, my heart pounding, and then I saw it, a file labeled Robert_Marshall, PDF. I double-clicked it, and the document opened, revealing a detailed account of Robert's involvement, bank transfers, email correspondence, even a handwritten note in his distinctive scrawl. It was all there, all of it, the proof I needed to bring him down. I printed the document, the pages spitting from the printer in a flurry of noise. I stacked them on the coffee table, my hands shaking, my eyes blurry with tears. This was it, the final piece of the puzzle, the smoking gun, the truth. I sat there for a long moment, staring at the pages, the weight of what I'd accomplished settling over me like a heavy blanket. I'd done it. I'd exposed the truth. I'd brought the criminals to justice. I'd reclaimed my life. And yet, I felt empty, hollow, numb. I thought about the press conference, about the applause, about the way people had looked at me, with admiration and respect. I thought about the way I'd felt, standing up there, telling the truth. And I realized that it wasn't enough, that the victory felt hollow, meaningless, that the cost had been too high. I thought about my mother, about the way she'd looked at me when I'd visited her in the hospital, her eyes filled with pride. I thought about my sister, about the way she'd hugged me, her voice trembling with relief. I thought about the nurses and doctors who'd supported me, who'd believed in me, who'd stood by me. And I felt a flicker of warmth, a small, fragile thing, but present nonetheless. I closed the laptop, packed the lockbox, and stood up. It was time to move on, time to heal, time to rebuild. The next morning, I reported to the hospital for the first time since the expose broke. The building was eerily quiet, the halls empty, the air heavy with the scent of antiseptic and despair. A skeleton crew of nurses and administrators manned the stations, their expressions grim. The patients who remained were either too ill to transfer or too poor to afford private care. The hospital was dying, and everyone knew it. I went straight to the nursing office, where my supervisor, Linda, was waiting for me. She looked up when I entered, her expression a mix of relief and sorrow. "Nicole," she said, her voice trembling. "Thank God you're here." I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. I'd spoken to Linda briefly on the phone, but seeing her in person was different. She'd been my mentor, my friend, my confidant, and she'd stood by me when no one else had. "I need to speak to the board," I said, my voice steady despite the emotion bubbling beneath the surface. Linda hesitated, then nodded. "They're expecting you. Follow me." We walked down the hallway in silence, our footsteps echoing against the tile. The boardroom was on the top floor, its windows overlooking the city. The members were seated around the long table, their expressions grim. Dr. Whitmore was there, his face pale, his hands clasped in front of him. He looked older than I remembered, his hair grayer, his shoulders stooped. "Ms. Marshall," he said, his voice hoarse. "Thank you for coming." I nodded, taking a seat at the opposite end of the table. "I'm here to resign," I said, my voice steady, effective immediately. The room erupted into a flurry of protests, the board members speaking over each other in their urgency. I held up my hand, silencing them. "I'm not doing this out of anger," I said, my voice rising. "I'm not doing this out of spite. I'm doing this because I can't be a part of this anymore. I can't work in a place where corruption is tolerated, where abuse is ignored, where lives are destroyed for profit." Dr. Whitmore leaned forward, his eyes blazing. "You don't understand. We're trying to fix this. We're trying to make things right." "No," I said, my voice cold. "You're not. You're covering it up. You're protecting the guilty. You're destroying what's left of this institution." He opened his mouth to respond, but I held up a hand. "Save it. I'm done listening to your lies. I'm done pretending that this is about anything other than greed. About power. About the systematic destruction of everything this hospital was supposed to stand for." I stood up, my bag slung over my shoulder, the lockbox clutched in my hand. "I'm leaving. And I'm taking the evidence with me. The ledger. The passport. The financial records. Everything. I'm giving it to the authorities. To the press. To whoever will listen. And I'm not looking back." With that, I turned and walked out of the room, the door closing behind me with a soft click. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew what I was leaving behind. I knew what I was walking away from. And I knew that I was finally free. The press conference was held in the same auditorium as before, but this time the mood was different. The room was packed, the air electric with anticipation. The reporters were eager, the cameras hungry. They'd been waiting for this moment, the final act in a drama that had captivated the nation. I stood at the podium, my hands clasped in front of me, the lockbox at my feet. I looked out at the sea of faces, the flashbulbs popping, the questions already starting, and I felt a strange sense of calm, a sense of purpose, a sense of closure. "Good afternoon," I said, my voice steady. "I'm here today to deliver the final piece of evidence in the City General Hospital corruption case. This evidence includes financial records, email correspondence, and a detailed account of the trafficking ring's operations. It's all here. All of it. The truth. The whole truth. And nothing but the truth." I bent down and opened the lockbox, removing the USB drive and the printed documents. I placed them on the podium, my hands trembling, my eyes blurry with tears. "This is for the victims," I said, my voice breaking. "For the women and children who were exploited. For the families who were torn apart. For the lives that were destroyed. This is for you." The room erupted into applause, the sound thunderous, overwhelming. I stood there for a moment, letting it wash over me, then turned and walked off the stage, my head held high. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew what I was leaving behind. I knew what I was walking away from. And I knew that I was finally free. The weeks that followed were a blur of depositions, court appearances, and interviews. The evidence I'd provided was irrefutable. The case against the hospital administrators and their criminal associates airtight. Dr. Whitmore resigned in disgrace. His reputation in tatters. The hospital was placed under federal receivership. Its assets frozen. Its future uncertain. Robert remained at large. His whereabouts unknown. But the authorities were closing in. Their net tightening with every passing day. I had no doubt that he would be found. That he would be brought to justice. That he would pay for his crimes. And me. I took a leave of absence from nursing. Using the time to heal. To reflect. To rebuild. I rented a small apartment in the city. Far from the hospital. Far from the memories. I started seeing a therapist. Working through the trauma. The grief. The anger. I reconnected with my family. My friends. My community. I found solace in the simple things. A good book. A warm cup of tea. A walk in the park. And slowly, gradually, I began to feel whole again. 6 months later, I stood on the steps of the New York State Supreme Court. My heart pounding. My hands clasped in front of me. The trial was over. The verdict was in. Guilty on all counts. Robert had been found guilty in absentia. His assets seized. His name synonymous with greed and corruption. The ringleaders were behind bars. Their empire in ruins. The victims were finally receiving justice. I looked out at the crowd. The reporters. The cameras. The survivors who'd come to witness the moment. And I felt a sense of peace. A sense of closure. A sense of triumph. I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The twists and turns. The highs and lows. I thought about the lies. The betrayal. The danger. I thought about the strength I'd found. The courage I'd discovered. The resilience I'd cultivated. And I realized that I was no longer the same person I'd been when this all began. I was stronger. Wiser. More resilient. More alive. I stepped up to the microphone. My voice steady despite the emotion bubbling beneath the surface. Today is a victory, I said. My voice clear. Not just for me, but for all of us. For the victims. For the survivors. For the truth. We've exposed the corruption. We've dismantled the network. We've brought the criminals to justice. And we've reclaimed our lives. I paused, letting my words sink in, then smiled. But this is just the beginning. The fight for justice is never over. The battle for accountability is never won. And the pursuit of truth is never complete. But today, we celebrate. Today, we honor the courage of those who came forward. Today, we remember the lives that were lost. And today, we recommit ourselves to the work that lies ahead. The crowd erupted into applause. The sound thunderous. Overwhelming. I stood there for a moment, letting it wash over me, then turned and walked away. My head held high. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew what I was leaving behind. I knew what I was walking away from. And I knew that I was finally free. Epilogue 1 year later. I stood on the balcony of my new apartment, overlooking the Hudson River. The city stretched out before me. A tapestry of light and shadow. Of hope and despair. I took a sip of wine. The glass cool against my palm. And watched the sunset. My phone buzzed. And I smiled when I saw the caller ID, Emily. Hey, sis. I said, answering the call. Hey, yourself. She said. Her voice warm. How are you doing? I'm good. I said. My voice soft. Really good. That's great to hear. She said. Mom's been asking about you. She wants to know when you're coming home for dinner. I felt a lump rise in my throat. I'll be there next weekend. I said. My voice trembling. I promise. We'll hold you to that. She said. Laughing. Love you. Kiddo. Love you too. I said. Hanging up the phone. I stood there for a long moment, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky ablaze with color. I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The twists and turns. The highs and lows. I thought about the lies. The betrayal. The danger. I thought about the strength I'd found. The courage I'd discovered. The resilience I'd cultivated. And I realized that I was finally home. Not the apartment. Or the city. Or the life I'd built. But the person I'd become. The woman I'd fought to be. The truth I'd claimed as my own. I took another sip of wine. the glass cool against my palm, and smiled. The storm was over, and I was ready for whatever came next. The end.